Welcome back, my friends, to the year-end spectacular from Mission for Tuition. 6 builds you should be using to climb to hyper tier. Okay, little over the top. Anyway, it's called Mission for Tuition because we are trying to raise money for our son's middle and high school tuition. Please like, comment, follow, subscribe, all that stuff to help the YouTube algorithm. We don't ask for donations, we're just looking for views. But let's get right into this. This first is going to lead into our first 2 builds. I like picking up a Singed with a Giant's Belt or a Chain Vest because it will lead into either one of 2 possible builds, but let's start with Chemtech. As you likely know, Chemtech was recently reworked, and as a result of that rework, it's pretty strong. In fact, in a lot of the lobbies I play in, there are 1 or 2 Chemtechs in the final 4 nearly every single game. The goal in Chemtech is pretty simple in that you want to create a really powerful ergot. The items you're looking for are often something like this. Runan's Hurricane is a must, and then some type of healing item like Bloodthirster, and then an additional damage or mana item. Damage item can be IE or Giant Slayer, and a mana item could be a Spear of Sojin. While it's nice to have a reach goal of 9 Chemtechs, 7 Chemtechs will do just fine, provided your ergot is strong enough. The healing is going to be key, they're going to regenerate a lot, and if you're hitting enough targets, especially with a Bloodthirster or Hand of Justice, you're likely going to win. You want to look for early signs from the game that it's going to be Chemtech friendly, such as a Chemtech heart early on, which will give you an additional Zac to make part of your team. I find using Twitch as the item holder for your ultimate ergot items to be incredibly effective. These items also work well on Twitch, and if you happen to get him up to gold 3 stars, he absolutely can carry your game, but you would then build more assassins instead of twin shot or going to 9 Chemtech. For augments throughout the match, you obviously want to look for Chemtech-based ones such as Instant Injection or Chemical Overload. They will be the obvious choices. My next choice is usually Healing, but some I like to go to if I don't have that is Weak Spot, which will shred some armor, and or Socialite Heart, because that will give you a Socialite or Empowered Hex on the board where you can put your carry. But as always, before going for the build, look for signs from the game that it's going to work. As I mentioned right now, I like grabbing Singed early, preferably with a tank item, but I'll pretty much take a Singed or Ezreal with anything, and that's for our next build, which is the Innovator Scrap. When deciding between Chemtech or Innovator, look for early signs like an Innovator right out of the box. And part of the reason I say I'll take Singed with any item is because he's fairly easy to swap out. As a 1-cost unit, you're going to have the opportunity to easily pick up an additional 2-star later on, and it'll be easier for you to make key items on Ezreal. For augments, it's pretty easy. The Innovator-specific ones, like Self-Repair, are no-brainers to pick up. If you see a Tome of Traits, you can try that and hope for an emblem. In lieu of that, I like Cybernetic Implants because that will make your scraps more powerful. For your carries, there are multiple directions you can go. You can go with Heimer if you get a bunch of AP items, mana items, Spear of Sojin, Jeweled Gauntlet, Rabadon's Death Cup, Hextech Gunblade, etc., etc. If you go for Ezreal, you can go with Bloodthirster, Rageblade, Runan's Hurricane, that type of thing. A lot of people will use Static Shiv on Ezreal. It can work if you're counting on AP, but if you're counting on AD, I tend to stay away from it. I love having 2 points that I can do damage from. And ultimately, unless you're in danger of getting the dragon, you're going to pull Singed out at some point and try to replace with Jace. Jace will either end up in the front row as a tank or the back row, which will enable you to increase the attack speed of all of the champions in the back row along with Jace. You could even substitute Jace for Ezreal, depending on how many Innovators you have and how you're setting up. It's going to be a judgment call at that time. If your Ezreal's doing well, you keep him in. If your Ezreal is kind of struggling and or your Singed is gotten up to 3 stars and is really powerful, keep him in and let him do his thing. But Jace, as you can see, is going to provide some excellent attack from the back line and also would be an excellent tank from the front line with decent tank items. Overall, if you can get yourself to 5 Innovator and 4 Scrap with the right items on the right champions, you pretty much have a ticket into the top 4. If you get to 7 and you have a dragon, you're probably going to win. But there's one more thing I want to say about it. The build comes with Seraphine, which gives you a Socialite Hex. If that hex is in the back row, then I like to put one of my back row carries, such as Heimer or Ezreal, in it. If it's in the front row, the general rule is to put your Mr. Roboto in it. But the exception to that for me is if you get an exceptionally powerful Jace, a 2-star with decent tank items, like in this case I had Bodyguard Spear of Sojin and a Gargoyle Stoneplate, which made him very tanky and able to withstand a lot of damage. If you can put that together, then that's pretty much a guaranteed ticket to victory. But with that behind us, let's move on to build number 3, which is probably one of the most and least popular builds in the game right now. And that is Yordles. And Yordles, like I say, is both loved and hated, and a lot for the same reasons. Yordles is fairly easy to build. You're following one main trait line and then whatever side trait works best into it. It could be enchanters, it could be scholars, it could be bodyguards. All of those will work along with Yordles. My kid even does a Yordle Syndicate build, which does really well for him. Now, why is it hated? Well, that's because of this. In any given lobby, you are going to find 2 to 3 people who are trying to go Yordles. And one of them is likely going to reach the top 4, if not win it outright. I see Yordles win more often than not. And that's sort of due to the simplicity of the carries. Heimer is an excellent AP carry, Tristana is an excellent AD carry, and Vex is an excellent tank. So you just load up those champions with those items, and you're probably going to do really well. Of course, that depends on whether the other person running Yordles in your lobby is getting luckier than you in terms of augments, rolls, and items. For augments, there are a few obvious ones like So Small, Trade Sector, and Golden Ticket, which gives you more rolls. But in general, pretty much whatever you want to go with will work, as long as you can get to the 6 Yordles and hopefully beat out the other person playing Yordles in your lobby. Look for a clear sign early in the game that you want to go Yordles by getting at least 3 Yordles by level 3, and you'll probably be in good shape. And with that said, let's move on to our next build. This build has been included in every single video for every single set, and it's Assassins. The reasons why Assassins keep making the list is because there are so many different ways to build it, and they're all really, really strong. The cat meta that has been alive since the beginning of this season is still very viable, and that's get your highest level Katarina possible, Infinity Edge, Ionic Spark, Hand of Justice, and she will absolutely wreck opponents. If a legendary champ is more your thing, don't worry, Akali has you covered. Give her a blue buff and then a type of healing item, whether it's a Hextech Gunblade or a Hand of Justice, and a damage item such as a Giant Slayer, and she will tear a team completely apart. But my favorite, and I have done several videos on it, is the Syndicate Assassins. This is done by getting to either 6 or 4 Assassins and either 5 or 7 Syndicates. You would need a spatula or an augment to get up to 7 Syndicates. If you don't do that, you can just go to 6 Assassins, because there are 6 Assassins in the game and 5 Syndicates, and 2 of them actually cross over. In deciding whether to go for Assassins, look for signs from the game, like Assassins out of the NPC round or Assassin-friendly augments. Don't try to force it, because likely someone has the right champions and augments and is going to take it, and you're going to see it throughout the game. Augments to take once you've decided. I like healing augments, of course smoke bomb or weak spot. Anything to make your assassin stronger will just get you where you need to go. Overall, it's a pretty easy build if you get the right champions, and I think you will do really well with it. And with that said, let's move on to our next build.
This next build is augment or spatula dependent, but I love it because it is basically free right now because for some reason people are ignoring it, and if you grab it, you're probably going to win, and that's Academy. Getting to the full 8 Academy is absolutely key, but it is so much easier than it used to be because there's not much competition for it. What I really love about Academy is it gives you 2 consistent points of damage that are 2 different damage types. You have Yone for AD and Lux for AP. If you happen to get an Academy emblem, you can put it on a champion like Kaisa. This will increase her AP, which makes her ult incredibly strong. Once she gets up to 2 stars, she is going to rip a team to shreds very, very easily. Of course, you want your standards in there, such as Lux and Yone, just to continue to clean things up. As you can see, Yone often is the one who gets the last laugh. If you have Lux as your main carry, you're going to want some type of mana item such as Blue Buff or Spear of Sojin so that she's casting early and often. After that, you want to increase her power with things like Jeweled Gauntlet, Rabadon's Death Cap, and if you can get it, a Hextech Gunblade so she can heal people along the way. If you go Yone, I personally like Runan's Hurricane, and then damage items. You can add healing items in, but they're not absolutely necessary since he heals as part of his ult. You'll want to look to your augments to see how often he's casting. If you've gotten Cram Session and he's casting often, then you might want to forego the healing items. For augments, there's no real requirement beyond making sure you get to the 8 Academy. After that, it's kind of up to you. You can go with healing augments to keep your champions up longer, or a Sunfire board if you just want to weaken the other team. Cram Session, if you see it, is a must take, but it's not necessary. Pretty much any set of augments will win as long as you can get to the 8 Academy. And with that said, let's move on to the final build, which is a build that has been requested, at least in concept, several times during live streams. You might remember in 5.5 I put together a build using Knights and Brawlers that was 100% tank with simply defensive items. I wanted to do my best to recreate that this season, and I feel like I've gotten there with bodyguards and enchanters. Now, this isn't something you can force like you could the Knights and Brawlers from last season. You really need to get the right augments for this to ultimately work. You could start it off chance by grabbing a Tome of Traits and then seeing if you get either a bodyguard or an enchanter and then building into it. In this case, I already had an enchanter on the bench and a bodyguard in the game, picked up the bodyguard emblem, and then was off to the races, because you can turn that enchanter also into a bodyguard and then gather everyone around the enchanter hex. Of course, if you just get the bodyguard heart straight out, go ahead, grab it. That's probably your best route to go, or of course an enchanter buff. If you get a chance to add healing, obviously add healing. I've also found cybernetic implants to be incredibly useful because it's adding a lot of health onto your champions. Yeah, you get some attack damage with it and you're trying to avoid that, but hey, why not? If you can get to it, your ultimate goal is to try to get to 6 bodyguards and 4 enchanters. And I add the little additional challenge for myself to try not to use any offensive items on offensive characters. So as you notice in this match, all of my Archangel staffs are on Janna, so they're leading into extra healing. This is just because, well, I'm a sadist, and there's something just immensely satisfying about watching teams that think for sure they're going to win be not able to take down your champions and be completely shocked when you pull it out. In this particular match that I'm going to end this video on, you can see there are 4 people left. I've gone completely defensive with the exception of some items on Orianna, which are really just kind of what I got stuck with, and I'm against a really well-stocked Yordle team. But like the tank build of yore, this is not a guarantee for you to win. But of the 6 or 7 times I have tried this build, every single time has ended up in the top 4. often in results like this, with long protracted battles that go well into overtime, all the way to a tie. As you will see in a moment, this left the teams laughing, but I'll end this video by saying I hope you enjoyed it and hope you have an absolutely awesome holiday season. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.